There are misinformation and disinformation regarding Ethiopia, especially when it comes to the law enforcement operation in the state of Tigray. Are our diplomacy and Ethiopians in the diaspora unveiling the truth enough? And are international communities willing even to listen? My guest today is Tefera Shiawl, a long-serving ambassador and journalist. We'll be spending some time with him to stay with us. Ambassador Tefera Shiawl, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, it's my pleasure.
Now, as a long-serving journalist and also as an ambassador, how would you compare the diplomats or the foreign policy at your time and today, especially in terms of presenting Ethiopia in the eyes of the world as it deserves?
Thank you. It's a very good question because we have to start with the premise of the historical context. First, I would like to put it in context. Foreign policy is an instrument for fulfilling internal policies of development, guarding sovereignty, ensuring the livelihood of the people, and ensuring peaceful existence of the state and the people. This is the foundation of foreign policy. This requires very smooth facilitation, unity of purpose of the state and of the people, determination to reduce threats against the state, and ensuring the stability and victory in the fight against poverty. As one 18th century or 19th century German or Prussian general, Clausewitz, stated, diplomacy is the pursuit of war through other means. So diplomacy is another way of mitigating problems of threats, problems of peace and stability. Ethiopia finds itself, fortunately or unfortunately, in the Horn of Africa region, which has known civil wars many times. And this interlinking Ethiopia's foreign policy with that of our immediate neighbors becomes important. Because we have to balance the relations with Ethiopia's supreme interests. As I stated, Ethiopia's interests are very clear. How do we walk the road with our neighbors? By safeguarding our policy, by safeguarding our independence, and then working for a common purpose of development. In this, our forefathers or the previous leaders had set up the GERD mechanism, which was primarily set up for mitigating the effects of drought and development, pastoralism. But now GERD has gone into peace building, peacemaking, and also serving as a forum for international cooperation. So the feelings of threat are mitigated by our neighbors who may be pursued to view Ethiopia as a giant, and they know that Ethiopia is not a country that can be pushed around, but cooperation has been the hallmark of our relationship with our neighboring countries. When the Emperor of Ethiopia was in power, he dealt with Eisenhower, with Roosevelt, with Kennedy, with every president that came. I remember when the Emperor decided to visit the Soviet Union on the heels of his successful diplomatic tour in America, the Americans were not amused. And then when the Emperor again went to see Mao Zedong, both Russia and America were not amused, because Ethiopia exercised an independent foreign policy. So long as the foreign policy of Ethiopia serves the common purpose of peace and development, collective security, why did Ethiopia fight in Korea, in the Congo? It was not because Ethiopia had to serve the interests of the United States or any other power. It was because the Ethiopian people believe in togetherness, believe in peace. And peace for Korea meant peace for Ethiopia. Peace for the Congo meant peace for Ethiopia. And even in the advent of EPRDF taking over the reins of power in Ethiopia, Ethiopian troops had to march into Rwanda into West Africa, into Burundi. Why? Because Africa's peace is Ethiopia's peace.
Let's also talk about the misinformation and disinformation going on about Ethiopia. Have you been in a situation where misinformation and disinformation about Ethiopia stood against its interests, as you are a long-serving journalist and also ambassador? And if so, how did you come up with the solution?
Thank you. It's a very pertinent, timely question. You know, governments have their own way of informing and misinforming. For instance, in a socialist setting, the socialist countries had their own misinformation. In fact, one of the Soviet Union had a department of misinformation in their defense ministry. So they misinform their adversaries. But Ethiopia has been very clear on its stand. Misinformation starts with telling lies several times. If you throw mud at a clean white wall, it falls down, but some of it sticks. And so is misinformation like this. So in informing and misinforming, there are tools. The Russians and the Americans studied your language, studied your different languages, penetrated your society, got more information about what you're doing, your activities. So they would tell you in a good language that you understand whatever policies they would like you to understand. Now, we have been placed in a position where we have to defend our integrity through truth. And truth has prevailed with Ethiopia in its history. When the Italians tried to misinform the world that they would civilize a savage country called Abyssinia, Abyssinia proved that it was a cultured country, a civilized country. So then others saw this. In London, in England, pre-Second World War, we had people, citizens of Britain, standing for Ethiopia. Italians standing for Ethiopia. Sylvia Pankhurst, who was parading in the streets of London fighting for Ethiopia. So fighting misinformation. She started the Ethiopian Times newspaper, articles and so on. And today we have a situation where the social media, the advent of internet, has made it possible for every Tom, Dick and Harry to tell every lie in the world and photoshopping past conflicts in other countries, making them appear as if they are in Ethiopia. Some of them could be true, but then at the same time, we have also to be advancing in a very fast manner, and we have to be competitive in terms of reporting what is taking place in our country, and rather than wait and deny it later. If there is something that goes wrong, we say there is something wrong, we address this wrong. There is nothing wrong with admitting that there is some problem in your back of in your backyard, and then convince the world that you are going to address it. Now, we have had this problem with the Middle East. You know, Egyptians are good at fabricating lies, at fabricating misinformation, and they would tell you. The other day, I think I heard one Egyptian media telling us that Dr. Abiy's cloud seeding technology is meant to cover the building activities, construction activities of the Grand Renaissance Dam. This is absolute nonsense, because they would create anything to portray themselves as the truth tellers. In any war, in any conflict, the biggest casualty is truth. Ethiopia has lost a lot of truth as a casualty because it stood with the truth. I don't remember in my diplomatic career, in my civil service career, being told to tell a lie. But we have been telling the truth to the world, whether they believe it or not, and those who are intelligent enough have believed us and stood with us. The pre-independent Africa believed us. Sincere Europe believed us. Sincere regimes in the United States believed us. From Eisenhower to John Kennedy to Nixon to barring except Donald Trump, who fantasizes some funny foreign policy options. We have had good relations with the United States, and I hope the current administration will also realize the culture, the history, the truth that Ethiopia is pursuing. And this is how we can fight misinformation. But we have to take one step ahead. In any activity in Ethiopia, we have to be a step ahead. And then, of course, in the pursuit of explaining the truth, explaining our position, we need the tools. The tools are good language, good policy, which we have, and good diplomats. Maybe we have. Now, we have diplomats who are articulate, and if there are people who are diplomats and yet are not able to articulate, I would advise them to seek other jobs, because this is a time when articulation of our national interests and convincing others to believe in what we are doing, to believe in our pursuit for peace and development should be followed.
What do you think is the reason behind the twisted framing of some international media when it comes to the law enforcement operation in the state of Tigray?
You know, I think the issue of Tigray is the only issue that has been raised, because it's one of the provinces of Ethiopia, where a United Nations Security Council has been sitting to discuss the internal policies of a country. That is not in its mandate, but they did it in any case. Ethiopia, for better or for worse, has maintained its stand that it is defending law and order. If there are some glitches in the pursuit of this policy, then we have also said we correct them. If there are atrocities, be it on any side, those who commit atrocities should be brought to justice. And this, I think, the Ethiopian government has already made clear. Humanitarian issues. We have been told that the Ethiopian government is hindering access and so on. But it's not true. Now the Ethiopian government has opened the doors. They have gone to Tigray, seen everything that our Tigrayan brothers and sisters are receiving. It may not be enough. We need to do more, and we have to admit that we are not strong enough to reach every home, every hamlet, every village to deliver the humanitarian services. But the attempt, the trial is being pursued. No, the Tigray is a very big and major attraction. Why they did it? You know, when the Italians wanted to invade Ethiopia, they came through Tigray, and they found local chieftains who were collaborating with the Italians, like the Jazmach Haile Selassie Gugsa, who joined the Italian forces with his 26,000 troops. And then there were also Tigrayan patriots who fought for their country. And then Eritreans came all the way from Lorenzo Tezaz to Blatta Ephraim to Old Medhin. All these people fought for their country, Ethiopia. The Egyptian, the Khedive Ismail forces came through the north, and at Gura, they started to fight against Ethiopian army. No Egyptian lived to tell the story because they were finished. Now, then through the Sudan, through the Mahadist forces, they attacked Ethiopia. Emperor Yohannes' forces. Emperor Yohannes gave his life for Ethiopia, but he saved Ethiopia. The unity of Eritrea and Ethiopia poses a great challenge for the detractors of Ethiopia, because these are two wonderful people that have the same culture, the same mentality, the same fighting spirit, and the same dedication to the preservation of self-independence. And this does not go down well, because we are setting a bad example in Africa because of self-assertion, self-independence. And then when the development of Ethiopia was going through a good trajectory, the power that came through our good alliances with China, strategic partnership with the West, with everybody, it saw a double-digit growth in economy. That was, again, not good for the Egyptians. The Egyptians felt that now they wanted to spread their hegemony over the Horn of Africa. They have been trying it through arming Somalis, through arming the Sudanese, through arming all our detractors. Now, when the two get together, the Eritrean and Ethiopian states, it creates a kind of threat or envy for our Egyptian detractors.
Now, as you know, some mainstream international media outlets are still trying to put the blame on the government and even the National Defense Forces for the heinous attacks committed in the state of Tigray. Why are they, in your view, violating journalistic ethics?
You should know that Western journalists, particularly in the United States, they can be easily bought through lobbyists, and Egyptians. You know, the Egyptians spent over $500,000 or so to set up a misinformation Facebook center to blame Ethiopia, to blame everything under the sky on Ethiopia. You know, you can tell a lie to many people too many times, but you cannot fool all people at all times. They have been exposed, like Amnesty International has been exposed, like some of the other international institutions which profess the monopoly of truth have been exposed and have been caught red-handed lying. What we should do is aggressively prepare our diplomats to aggressively defend their cause, articulate in a manner that is better to defend the country. Now, look at the Chinese. If you look at China television, 70% of their announcers are original Englishmen or Americans. Why do they do that? They are telling Americans and Europe in their own good language what Chinese policy is. But we have to also engage people who can do good, better. There are many in the diaspora who speak good English. Bring them in. Let them help us. Let them help us articulate. And speaking of the diaspora, they are a big force Ethiopia has. Look at what they did a few weeks back. They moved heaven and earth throughout the world, from Australia to Los Angeles, from Norway, Sweden to South Africa. This is a big force. We have to use them in order to dispel all the misinformation that has been taking place against Ethiopia. The National Defense Forces can defend themselves. They defend us, they defend the country, and they can defend themselves even in terms of propaganda. I have heard the other day, they have all the clippings and the films that they have on the atrocities committed by the other side. So, keep on. It's not a one-time affair. It has to be continuously broadcast.
And also, what should, in your view, the government of Ethiopia do in order to refute such baseless allegations?
The government has been doing a good job in terms of refuting whatever false information has come. The spokesman for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Minister of Water and Energy, and many others have been doing a good job at dispelling any unnecessary misinformation. The problem is misinformants are everywhere. They can be bought. Someone sitting in Boston pretends he is a priest in Aksum and tells us a story that is absolutely rubbish. And yet, those paid lobbyists will buy that. So, we have to be consistent in our repulsing the attack of our adversaries.
Let's also talk about the GERD diplomacy. Do you think that Ethiopia has made its position, its stance clear to the international community? It's becoming obvious that the issue is more of lack of political commitment than the technicalities.
That's true. In any case, let's go back to what Mr. Al-Sisi or President Al-Sisi has been saying. Now, General Al-Sisi said nobody can take a drop of water from Egypt. Egypt has no water in the Nile Valley. It is Ethiopia's water that we are giving them. And then Abai, the Blue Nile, is the one that they are contesting. As the Prime Minister Abiy said, we are not taking any water. The water is still flowing. Whatever the good God gives us by way of rains, it accumulates. The Egyptians, the Sudanese are getting. And if we had been holding the water, the Nile wouldn't flow today. It is still flowing. They are still drinking water, thanks to the generosity of the Ethiopian people. And Ethiopia has always maintained that the water that goes through the GERD dam only turns the turbines, generates electricity, and goes back to them. Not a drop stays in Ethiopia after it passes through the dam. They know that. The Egyptians know it. But in order to exercise their hegemony, their big power kind of the slave master attitude, they always bring one reason after another. Even in the negotiations, they keep on shifting the goalpost. Today they would seem to agree on one thing, and tomorrow they change their minds. So they are messengers of big powers whose interest is in Africa and African resources. Thank God the Ethiopian people have been consistent in their repulsion of this Egyptian approach. And unfortunately, the Sudanese are not known to be consistent in their foreign policy pursuits. When al-Bashir was there, they knew it is to their advantage. I should add that in the history of relations between Ethiopia and the Sudan, Ethiopia has been consistently struggling for the independence of the Sudanese people, particularly when they were under British and then their surrogate Egyptian condominium rule. So they had two masters, and we struggled to free them from two masters, Anglo-Egyptians. So after that, when President Azhari took over, and also when General Aboud was president of the Sudan, relations were very good. Then when Aboud was overthrown and the son of the great Mahdi, Sadiq el-Mahdi, was campaigning to be the prime minister of the Sudan, to be the leader of the Sudan, the emperor of Ethiopia, and indeed the leadership in Ethiopia looked at Sadiq el-Mahdi as a brother and a sister and a son. I remember as a young diplomat when emperor was sending to the tune of $250,000 to Sadiq el-Mahdi to help him in his campaign to be the prime minister of the Sudan. Today, his daughter is the foreign minister. I don't think she knows this story. I don't think she knows the kindness that the emperor of Ethiopia, the people of Ethiopia, have provided to her father. And today, she is in the pockets of the Egyptian military oligarchy and trying to tell us what to do, who to choose as our friends, what Sudan can do. And it is it's a sad story. But anyway, I hope she will come back to her senses, read her books, read the files of her father, and understand why Ethiopia is defending its territorial integrity, its dignity, its respect, its independence. Now, if the Nile water goes, the Nile, in a regulated manner, imagine the agricultural development Sudan would be enjoying. And the Gulf states were interested in buying, in investing in the Sudan. Egyptians don't want that. You see? Actually, it is to stop the Gulf states from investing in Sudanese agriculture. And the Sudanese, when Ethiopia and Prime Minister Abiy helped them to lift the sanctions imposed on them, they are not even grateful. The United States sanctions were lifted thanks to Prime Minister Abiy's efforts. Now, But they are not grateful. The Egyptians have never been grateful for the gift of the Nile that we gave them, because they always thought that they should control Ethiopia. They should come to the mountains. Now, when Trump said why he was wondering why the Egyptians did not bomb the dam, I just couldn't help laughing, because the moment the dam collects water, and they don't have any dam busters, but if they could succeed in busting the dam, you know what happens? Cities from Khartoum to Alexandria will be history, because it will be washed away. They know that this is just a non-starter. So the question of hegemony, the question of the master and slave mentality of Egypt with the imperialist and former colonial powers, the question of Sudan's slavish mentality vis-à-vis the Egyptians, that has been the problem. We told them, look, the Sudanese and the Ethiopians are the same people. We can even form one country. When the GERD came to power, I remember, it even proposed a confederation of the Nile state countries. The Sudanese, for some funny reason, flip-flop anytime somebody offers something else. Now Al-Burhan thinks that he can, with his 3 or 4 jet planes, come and fly over Ethiopia. Let him fly. They will find out, like the Egyptians found out at Gura and Gundet. There will be no Sudanese to tell the story. And our defense forces have ensured that, and we will see. I'm not trying to brag on behalf of the defense forces, but we depend on them. We believe, we have faith in their ability to defend Ethiopia. And the Ethiopian people, as one country, will rise up. And that is why they're triggering conflicts here and there, financing small little shiftas here and there. It's nothing else. Ethiopia will prevail. We have prevailed for thousands of years, and we will.
Let's also talk about the Egyptian diplomacy. As you know, the Egyptian diplomacy, on the other hand, is working hand in glove with the media. Most of the time, we're witnessing vivid meddling or interference in the internal affairs of Ethiopia. They work aggressively to twist the facts and keep their, as you said, hegemony over the Nile. We can cite, for example, the Egyptian Center for Strategic Studies. What are your observations here?
Well, Egyptians have a very good diplomatic school. Let's admit that. They are aggressive. They are consistent in the pursuit of their interests. Let's give them credit. I wish I had 10 or 15 Ethiopian diplomats that would be as aggressive as the Egyptian diplomats. They have, the military-industrial complex that rules Egypt today, and the foreign ministry are a deep state. They have the power monopoly in that country. They can train as many. If you meet any Egyptian, he has either been through the military intelligence or through the military industrial complex, and then, of course, did his study somewhere else. They have a good school. They train their people in languages. They are articulate. So what we can learn from Egypt, if we should, is strengthen our diplomatic school, strengthen our diplomats through the tools of language and reading and history and other issues. Anybody who reads Ethiopian foreign policy would say it is good, because there is nothing wrong with it. Implementing it has been difficult, because the ability to do that requires knowledge, reading, and commitment. Commitment is very important. I know most of my colleagues, most of my Ethiopian diplomats, diplomat friends, are committed. And I have no doubt. But it matters a lot in terms of working consistently on what is possible, on what is doable. And so long as you have truth on your side, nobody can prevail over Ethiopia. Truth is on the side of Ethiopia.
We have this the issue in Tigray. And also, Ethiopia is preparing for its national election. We are also about to fill the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. All these things being as they are, what are your messages to the international communities, to the diasporas?
As the government declared and was confirmed also by the international community, more than 70% of the assistance to our brothers and sisters in Tigray has been delivered by the Ethiopian government. Therefore, the issue of transferring humanitarian assistance into development is also another challenge. Then economic resources, reconstruction of damaged infrastructure, damaged schools, bridges, electricity, communications lines. These also require a huge task. I would suggest that this has to be guarded at key strategic points, because the opposition tries to sneak through some different places and cut the wires and so on. And then the military and security structure has to be robust and be continuing to be robust in the area. And peace in Korea, Congo, and West Africa, Burundi, Rwanda, has been achieved by the assistance and through the assistance, to a certain extent, of Ethiopian peacekeeping forces. Ethiopia is committed to peace. So these Ethiopian forces have been exposed to international kind of peacekeeping. They are perhaps better prepared to defend, to keep the peace in Ethiopia, even if the Sudanese today say, no, we don't want Ethiopian peacekeeping. You will see. Soon the Sudanese will be engulfed in their own civil strife. Then there is a social sector which we have to look at. Education facilities have to be strengthened, have to be rehabilitated. So this is what needs to be done in Tigray. And then the public relations aspect. The public relations aspect is very important. We have to tell them the truth as it is, discuss with the people, interact with the people continuously through the mechanism of the governance, the provisional administration, through the high authorities. And then, of course, foreign policy debates in Tigray universities, in Addis Ababa and other universities should be conducted freely. University debates, the cons and pros of what happened and what should happen and what should be done in the future. Then, of course, the Eritrean issue has to be also tackled. The Eritreans have said they're withdrawing their troops, and they have started. What's the big deal? Any country can invite any force to come to its aid if need be. So it is the sovereign right of Ethiopia whether to want Eritrea to come in or not. It's not for America to tell us. It's not for England to tell us. Whether this is right or wrong, Ethiopia has the sovereign right to invite any force. We could invite Koreans to come or Japanese to come and assist. Then, of course, the Ethiopian foreign policy, should also be respectful of Eritrean policies, which it is, and no one should choose friends for Ethiopia. We choose our friends. When, as I told you, when the emperor visited the United States and was feted and given good reception by Eisenhower, Nixon, Kennedy, and so on, nobody complained. But when he went to the Soviet Union, they complained. When they went to Mao, they complained. Why? Ethiopia has the right to choose its friends. So long as the interests of our interlocutors converge and serve a common purpose of peace and peaceful coexistence, peaceful co-development, there is nothing wrong. And this sense of independence that Ethiopia has throughout the ages is what our detractors don't like. We have shown example to the rest of Africa. In one go in 1960s, 30 African countries became independent. Colonialism had to move out. Why? Because Ethiopia set the example. Namibian case. Ethiopia and Liberia were the sole countries that argued the case for South Africa to withdraw from Namibia. South Africa at that time was ruled by the white minority. And then you go on and go on and go on. The history of Ethiopian independence, the survival of Ethiopian independence, as Professor Robinson has been saying, is a product of our historical determination to struggle, to keep our independence without wanting others. Ethiopia has never gone to another country to fight. Others have come to fight against us. So this is what we have to convince others. Then Ethiopia is a God-fearing country. And God has been always on the side of Ethiopia. Read the Bible. Ethiopia stretched her hand out to God. So long as we keep the faith, we are determined, and we show positive disposition, despite the dogs that bite our hand, we survive. Our children will survive. Our forefathers have done it, we did it, and we'll do it now. So this big bragging about military exercise on the borders of Ethiopia, I think they haven't read their history, their own history. And we, as Ethiopian people, will stand, I myself, I'm committed to stand with my government in terms of defending the territorial integrity and unity of Ethiopia. Unity does not mean just everybody speaking the same language, speaking the same thing. No, unity is in the heart.
Thank you so much for your wonderful perspectives.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Well, dear viewers, with that we come to the end of this program. Thanks a lot for your company so far. Until I see you with another program, it's goodbye from me. Shukran alaikum. Bye-bye.